Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the CyberGizmo, we're going to be taking a look at Linux Mint 19.3, codename Trisha, right after this. I wanted to take a look at Linux Mint 19.3, mainly because, a lot of times that when new users are first coming into Linux, a lot of the times this will be one of the first distributions that you will probably have your eyes drawn to if you go to, the distro page or distro watch or looking for any information on Linux at all. Chances are this will be the first place that you will come to find information about Linux. So what is Linux Mint? It is a community-based and supported distribution of Linux. It is based on Ubuntu and Debian. Their quote is modern, elegant, and comfortable, meaning that it's a release that's designed to help new users that are coming from, say, Windows. I don't know if this would be the right distribution for someone coming to Linux from a Mac. However, it is more familiar. It provides an environment that's more familiar to people that are using Windows than it would someone that was using a Mac. It is powerful and it is easy to use. This is their quote, not mine. It is generally recommended for new users. Now, of course, there are other releases, and you've heard me talk about Peppermint and MX19 and some of those. So you may, if you're looking at Linux for the first time, you might consider taking a look at those two as well. But this one offers kind of a well-rounded set of applications, and it's more geared towards someone who's unfamiliar with Linux and needs kind of a little bit of extra help and maybe a little bit extra coaching, and the system does do that. But if you're more experienced with Unix and Linux, you may find your application sets that you need and want are here as well for you. So to label Linux Mint as strictly a beginner's OS, I think it's really unfair, because it like any Linux distro, you can turn this into an advanced workstation as well. So it will grow with you. So if you're starting out and you're looking for something that will grow as your needs change, this is probably not a bad one to consider. Linux Mint was initially released, now not 19.3, but the original version of Linux Mint was released in August 2006. So it's been around for a while. It's been around, 13 years, 14 years now. The latest release, 19.3, which is the one that I'm going to be looking at today, was released in about mid-December 2019, so about 2 months ago or so. The platforms that Linux Mint supports, it does support i386, the 32-bit now. I mean, there can't be a lot of hardware that is 32-bit only out there, but if you do have a machine that is manufactured sometime after 2007, chances are you have a machine that will support 64-bit. If you're installing this, if you need support on an older machine, then yes, there is a 32-bit version of the OS that is supported as well. But if you're on 64-bit, then you would want to choose the x86 64-bit, or if you're coming from ARM. Now, I didn't see this as an option to install, but on their website it says they support ARM 64. But I did not see that as an option to download. The default user interface is, they offer three: Cinnamon, Mate, or Xfce. The differences between them is Cinnamon is more of a operating environment for someone coming from Windows. Mate is a lot faster as far as a desktop than Cinnamon is going to be, and it offers, about the same kind of experience. I wouldn't say the exact same experience, but if you are familiar with GNOME version 2, Mate would be very familiar to you. Now, the Linux Mint team is heavily involved in the development of Mate, And so a lot of the new stuff that you'll see in Mate comes to Linux Mint first. Xfce is a very slimmed down system, desktop interface. If you're a beginner, that's probably not going to be for you. It's very slimmed down, very simplified. It's more for someone who's familiar with Linux. So starting out with Xfce as a new user, you'll probably find that very frustrating. But again, it depends on which download you choose. So on the download page, there's options to download a Cinnamon desktop version of Linux Mint. There's Mate Linux Mint, and also Xfce Linux Mint. So yeah, it depends on which one you want. And then of course there are options for 32 or 64. It follows the same, and I think this has been true since Linux Mint 5. But if my memory serves me correctly, but yeah, it follows kind of the same release cycle as Ubuntu does. So they may delay just a little bit, but yeah, it's going to follow kind of in general what Ubuntu does and what they release. It provides both open source applications as well as proprietary ones. Now, the open source ones, LibreOffice, of course, is an Office suite. So it has word processing and spreadsheets and some database functionality, as well as a bunch of other things. And Firefox, of course, is the default browser. Thunderbird, the email client. That's done by the Firefox team. I almost said Mozilla. That would be incorrect. Hexchat, I should say, for your IRC discussions. Pigeon for messaging, transmission for file transfer, VLC for different kinds of media, whether it be audio or video, and GIMP for to be able to change a similar program to Photoshop version 3. It goes way back. But the look and feel of GIMP is very similar to the older version of Photoshop. It provides proprietary software as well, Adobe Flash, MP3, DVD playback, and you can prevent that. It is because it is an option you have to select during the install. It does support multiple languages, so if you need additional language support, that is provided with Linux Mint. It can be booted from a USB flash drive if you prefer that type of booting methodology. It also supports Logical Volume Manager, but they do not give you any options for partitioning with LVM, so that's automatic only, so you can't really do much with that. And of course, you'll need LVM if you want to encrypt the hard drive. Now, in Linux Mint, you can, if you want, just encrypt your home directory. So that's another option that you have. KDE used to be one of the desktop managers that was provided by Linux Mint. That's no longer supported, and that's been true since the Linux Mint version 19. I think it was 0 was the first release where they took KDE out. Linux Mint has always been focused on the desktop user. There is not a server version, to my knowledge. And I don't know of a way, we'll look at it during the install, but I didn't see any way of disabling the installation of the desktop manager, which of course would create a server environment. But yeah, I suppose you could rip it out if you wanted to, but that would be a lot more work. Minimum hardware requirements. For the desktop, you'll need a 2 gigahertz dual-core processor or better. 1 gig of RAM, although they recommend 2, and we'll see today that 1 gig is more than sufficient for this. But yeah, if you're going to do anything serious with it, try to do multiple windows and so forth, and have those open with multiple applications, yeah, you're probably going to need 2 gig. You'll need at least 20 gig of disk space in order to install it. Although, of course, it won't take that much once everything is installed, but I believe when it lays down the partition, it allocates at least 15 gig for the root partition. So you'll need at least 20 to do that. VGA compatible 1024/768 or better screen resolution. I don't think that'll be a big problem. VGA's been around a very long time. Either a CD or DVD drive or a USB port for the install media. If you're installing this, of course, on a virtual machine, you can install straight from the ISO, as you'll see today. Internet access, if you want to be able to maintain your system and keep it up to date, you will, and or add packages, you will certainly need that. But you can download the full and install from the CD or ISO if you want to as well, but you won't be able to keep it updated without going to get a new CD, and that gets a little bit more involved. So yeah, you'll need an internet connection. Laptop, Intel Atom processor, 1.6 gigahertz or higher. 386 megabyte of system memory, 4 gig of disk space, screen resolution 1024 by 600. Graphics chipset is needed if you want to support visual effects. Now, that kind of a platform would be very similar to a non-ARM and Intel-based low-end laptop. So it doesn't take a lot of horsepower to run this. So I guess probably the thing to do here is actually drop into our favorite place and take a look at this. So I'm going to use boxes today since this doesn't have any specific requirements for UEFI. So we'll go ahead and do that. So I'm going to create a new virtual machine. As you can see, I have installed it already. It does see the ISO file, but it does not recognize it as any one. It doesn't recognize it as Ubuntu. It doesn't recognize it as Debian. So this is fine. 2 gigabytes of memory and 21.5 gigabytes of disk. Now in boxes or KBM, it works similar to VirtualBox in that you can select. These are by default drives that expand as they need to, in order to accommodate the amount of software that you've installed. So consider that a maximum, not necessarily a minimum. So we'll go ahead and start this up. And right away we get a menu we can start. I guess I better move this around or it'll take off on its own. But yeah, so we can start Linux Mint. We can start in compatibility mode. If I have some concerns about my machine's hardware, I could start this in compatibility mode and run it. OEM install, that's not for us. We can do an integrity check, just check and make sure that the ISO media is okay. By the way, whenever you download an ISO, make sure you follow the steps to verify the media to make sure that you're getting what they intended that you get. It would be very easy to install a tainted version of an ISO if you don't do that. And make sure that your keys agree with what they said your keys should be. So, and I have done that already. So we'll go ahead and start this up. And it shouldn't take more than a few seconds to come up. And this will be yeah, that's not one of my favorite things about Linux Mint. So the first thing I would normally do would be to go in and disable that. So the audio that comes up, it usually will just scare the bejesus out of you. So anyway, this is the live environment, and like all live environments, I can kick the tires, play around with this a little bit before I actually install it. But for today, we're actually going to install the thing. If you've installed Ubuntu before 1910, 1904, you'll probably notice that this is very similar in the way that it does that. So I'm going to pick, I'm US, so I'm going to pick that for my keyboard. This is normally where you could say, I want to install the third party or not. I'm going to elect not to because I really don't need Flash and don't really want it. I'm going to erase and install Linux Mint. Now, I could encrypt this, but of course that is going to require LVM to do that. Or I could set up partitions myself if I'm using ext4. And well, if you want more explanation on the different types of file systems in Linux, I have a video on that, and you can go and check that out. It's recognized that I'm in the Central Time Zone. Pick Chicago. So now it's asking me to set up a user. Now for this, I'm going to call this Linux Mint 2. I'll change my username. pick a super secret and also a very secure password. I'm not sure what the maximum length is. We could, I guess, test that. Let's see. Let's see what it actually will take. 6 characters is all it needs before it says fair. Now, I don't recommend that. People have asked me what's the length of password you should use. Well, my answer right now is don't use a password. Go to 2FA or MFA. But if you are putting a password in, it should be at least 12 to 18. That's the recommended, 18 being a DoD standard. So, yeah, it's rather long, isn't it? So, yeah, they were talking passphrases here, not passwords. So, yeah. So if you want my advice, 12 to 18. And also will remind you that in the old days, in AT&T actually did a study of how many characters could people remember, and it's 7. So you won't remember the password. You'll have to put it into some kind of password manager. So I'm going to pause it here, like I always do, and I think we started about 16:02. So I want to pause. Okay, so we're done essentially, and it as you can see, it only took a couple of minutes to do that. So the installation process is pretty painful, and it's ready for a restart. This is very similar to Ubuntu. It's going to stop, and it's going to ask me to remove the media, which I could do. I'm not going to because the priority order of the boot is to take the hard drive first. So I'll go ahead and start this back up. And this will take a little bit longer because it has to set up my user account. So your first one will take a little bit longer than it normally should. And I'm at the login screen. That looks like SDDM. And there's that. Again, so it's telling me I'm missing hardware drivers. It's looking for video acceleration from a graphics card, and of course, I'm under a VM, and that doesn't have one. So there's a nice introduction here to Linux Mint. Talks a little bit about some first steps that you can take. These all launch the browser and take you to their website and give you some more explanation. I think that's very good. It's always very helpful. And then, of course, it has the full documentation here as well. And then if there are specific things on help that you need, you can go to their web forums or to their IRC chat room. And if you want to contribute to the project, be a participant, you are more than welcome to do that. And I'm sure they would be grateful for any help that you would provide them. So I'm going to close that, and the first thing I'm going to want to do is what I always do, and that is to bring up a terminal window, and I'm going to have to resize this a bit so that you can see what I'm doing. Hopefully you can see that okay. Yeah. I'm going to update the APT as the package manager. Now, I could do this under the GUI. I just prefer not to. And so first thing I do is an update on the cache for the APT files or the packages that are there. So it brings down a new list of the packages and their versions. And then I'm going to go ahead and tell it to, if it does find any differences, go ahead and do those upgrades and take the default yes, and we'll go ahead and get this started. There'll be quite a few, and I will be back. Okay, so that took about 4 minutes or so, and I'll go ahead, it's done. I'm going to go ahead and reboot this. I'll show you how to use the desktop. I grew up in command lines, what I'm used to. Sorry. Sometimes graphical user interfaces are faster. Most of the time they're not. Yeah, there's that again. Okay, so we're back up. So what I want to do right now is, I guess, first is to get rid of this confusing mess. I don't need that on there. So I need to expand this out a little bit. So I need to find probably display, I'm guessing. Yep, there's display. And it's saying I'm for, yeah, that's that's a little small. Okay. We'll expand this out. Yeah, keep it. So if you have monitors that have multiple resolutions, it will pick the highest one by default if you're installing this on hardware, but if you want to change it, you certainly can. I'm going to go ahead and put this in full screen mode. And the next thing I would do, I'll make this a little bit bigger for y'all. Let me just set that right there. That should be good enough. And let's find out. So I'm thinking, yeah, okay, this is 5.0. So this is definitely based on Ubuntu 18.04 LTS, which that makes sense because it says right here, 18.04 is the baseline release for this. So you're going to probably find, if you're an experienced user, you're going to probably find the packages are out of date. And that should change in April when we go to the next 20.04 LTS of Ubuntu. That should then be incorporated into Linux Mint, I would imagine, as well. So you would probably end up having to be reliant on PPAs in order to get the latest versions of the system. But 5.0 is definitely a newer kernel than 18.04 LTS is, because that's 4.19. 4.19 is the LTS kernel that was shipped with 18.04, so it is a little bit newer. As far as, let's look at some of the other things we usually look at. I think this is going to show, yeah, Linux Mint as the base. So it is their own distribution. If you're wondering about the version of Cinnamon, it's 4.4.2. After the update, that's what it put in there. So, yeah, that's the version that it's given me. As we'll check some of the other versions, but first of all, I want to do my usual thing. So it's occupying about 6.4 rather, 6.4 gigabytes. But you'll notice that it's allocated quite a bit of space to the root partition. And of course, it's slugged everything into that one partition, including var and temp and Xfce. And yeah, so, okay, so the next thing I would want to do here is, let's see. Is NeoFetch already on it? Yes, it is. So NeoFetch is on here. There's 1,879 packages installed. Oh, I'm sorry, 448 is the latest release of Cinnamon that's on here, and it tells you right there. So I'm going to want to install a few things that I know are not here. And I'm also going to want HTOP. Okay, so yeah, one thing that's different about boxes over Virt Manager is that Virt Manager, you can assign the number of CPUs that you want. In boxes, it just takes them all. It'll just share all the processors with your host. So that could be good, that could be bad. But it's showing 624 meg of memory being used right now. And what does Glances say? I'm going to bet it's higher. About almost 800 meg, 799, 798. Yeah, about 800 meg of memory actually required to run this. So could you get by with 1 gig? Probably, if you're not doing a lot. I think as soon as you bring up a browser, though, I think it will take almost all of that. Let's just see what happens as I bring up Firefox here. Just lay that on top. Yeah. So 1 gig, probably not. I probably wouldn't recommend 1 gig. because as soon as you brought up a browser, it would take all the memory that your machine had, and you would be running very slow. So yeah, while we're in here on Firefox, let's take a look at what version that is. 73. That's not the newest, but it is certainly not the oldest either. So, and it's not the one that is that has a critical security vulnerability either. So, okay, that's all right. That's all right. And you'll notice it opens up to their homepage, which is nice. The other thing I would want to check here is, let's look up Gluster. So the default search engine is, you're probably going to want to change that. Yahoo, really? You'll probably want to change that. And to do that, you would go into Preferences and right here, Search. Yeah, and there's your default search engine. I would change that to DuckDuckGo, and then I probably would just go ahead and, yeah, get rid of all the ones that like to track you around the web. So one thing we'll check on this is to see how much of an effort this is going to be to. I should have done that while I was in here. Sorry about that. Let's go and do a search for Linus. Since I restarted it, it should, yeah, there we go. I want to go to a tool that will help me identify how much work it's going to be to harden this OS. I have videos on that as well, so if you're interested in the steps to harden Linux, you can go there. I'm going to just go here. Copy and paste that. I'm sure I'll have to install Git. Yeah, when you're making a recommendation to someone who's new to Linux, you probably want to check and see just how much of an effort is this going to be to get it to a point where it's safe to use. See, so I want to do a sudo git clone, and then I want to paste what I just copied off of their website. Now I haven't done anything, haven't installed any other packages other than Git, and I've installed HTOP, and I installed Glances. That's it. I haven't put any system software out here at all for hardening. I'm trying to find out, like I said, I'm trying to find out how much of an effort this would be. So we're going to let it find out for us. So the first problem it has is it doesn't recognize this as a known OS, which is a problem with Linus, not with the system. They just don't recognize Linux Mint. Seeing quite a bit of yellow going by, which means there are some suggestions. Red are the things we're really looking for. We see red, we know that that's work we definitely have to do, and I'm seeing red as it goes by. Now at the end, this will give me a recap, and it gives me a log. Why did you remount my CD-ROM? That's annoying. Okay, so let's see what we got here. So the overall score is 65. That's not great. That's not passing. That's fail. That's a fail. IP tables modules loaded, but no rules active. Okay. Password on, well, yeah. Do I have any? Core dump is enabled. Password strength and password aging is not done. And of course, the usual nag about var and Etsy and no temp should be in their own. In the home directories too, there's some problems with some modules that are unused but are being loaded. That's not good. You shouldn't have things loaded that you're not using. So Linux Mint folks, you might want to look into that. You shouldn't be loading modules that aren't being used. Issue, that's minor. Accounting, audit, yeah. These are all similar things that happen on any system. File permissions are not set correctly. That's not good. Home directories aren't as strict. That's normal with most Linux distributions. And it's telling me I need to install a hardware scanner. That's also normal. So Is this really a complicated setup to do? No. Yeah, I wouldn't say this is too bad. I think the real problem here is the fact that the IP tables, it found it, and it didn't have any rules in it by default. And we can certainly check that. Nope, it's wide open. The first thing we'd probably want to do is even if you have a firewall external on your system, it's always a good practice to put a firewall on the internal systems as well. Yeah, in fact, you could go as far as making each link to each system that you want it open for. You could go even that far if you wanted, but I mean that's neither here nor there. We're not doing that today. So what else can we explore? So okay, let's look at the file manager. That looks like Nemo. Yeah, that looks like Nemo. So that is Nemo. Okay, not crazy about that, but you may feel differently. And as we said, hex chat is there, Thunderbird transmission, and that is used to do file copies. So I can open a torrent. It's 2.92. Okay. Not great. No, it's okay. It's not great. So we have some tools here. We have a backup tool. Your personal data, back it up. Software selection, back it up. Okay, that's nice. That's nice. What else? We have an administration. Disk usage analyzer. That's just the graph of the disk. Should give you an exploded chart over on the right here. As soon as it figures out what's there. I'm going to guess this is going to take a bit because it's got to go look through 6. Yeah, okay. And that's nice. It tells you where all of your disk is being consumed, and at the moment it's in the lib, which is, yeah, that would be true. That would be true. Could not scan, because of permissions, I'm sure. Yep. Okay, I ain't gonna worry about that. But, interesting that it didn't ask me to run as root or under sudo. That's kind of interesting. I would assume that they would know that if you're going to pick the root directory, you would need root permissions to do that. Software manager. Yeah, okay. So they have Steam and Wine as listed as here. Those are the editor's picks. Let's look at Office tools. The check mark means that it's been installed. Sublime, interesting. That is proprietary software and requires a license to use it. So that's interesting that that's in the list. I don't know how that works on this version. I guess maybe we can install it. Maybe it's a trial. I'm going to try it because normally you have to pay for that one. No launch, doesn't have a launch option. So I guess I have to go, is there a recent? No. Editors? No. Programming? Yes. Okay. Let's do about. Yeah. Purchase a license. So yeah, it probably is going to give you a trial version for a while, and then it's going to bug you for a license. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove that. I don't think I need Sublime. Nano course is installed. Okay. Let's go out and look at some other stuff. Driver manager. Why would I need a driver manager under Linux? This would be something probably that a Windows user would expect to find, but as a reminder, no proprietary drivers. As a reminder, the Linux kernel, unlike Windows, has its drivers built in. So, yeah, you can install third-party drivers like the NVIDIA drivers and so forth, and I'm assuming that would show here, but this isn't giving me any options to do anything with this. So, yeah. Not sure what use this is. So yeah, I mean, other than maybe giving Windows people a warm and fuzzy that there's a driver manager, Windows you have to install for every device you have to have a driver installed for it. There's nothing in the kernel to do that. So I guess that's to give them warm and fuzzies that it's their HTOP login window. I assume this allows me to customize. Yep, it allows me to customize. Draw a grid, put a theme. Yeah, okay, wonderful. All right, we won't be doing that. Logs. Okay, so I have important messages that Pulse Audio failed. You know, here's one of my complaints with most of this stuff. That's great. I mean, if you're a programmer, this kind of information is really helpful. Yeah, did not receive a reply. Possible calling the remote app did not send a reply. And a message about security policy blocked the reply. Not likely, since the firewall isn't running and the reply timed out or a network connection was broken. More likely, that's the problem. But yeah. That's all great if you're a programmer. It's not too useful as a user because it doesn't help you solve it. Generally, people would see stuff like that, and then they would immediately jump into the forum and go, hey, I got this error. What do I do? So, yeah. If you're going to bother with putting, just minor criticism, if you're going to bother to do that, you should probably put some remediation on how to handle the error. I mean, great if you're a programmer, but otherwise, power stats, processor wake-ups. Okay, that's not very useful to me. Maybe it is to you. That's not very useful to me. Printers, I guess that allows me to set up printers. Yep, I can add one. I don't have any. I don't use printers. Definitely not use cups, that's for sure. If you look back in history at the number of software vulnerabilities, cups, winner by far. Winner by far, and probably followed closely by email servers. It's software manager, I think we did that. So let's go on. Software sources. Okay, this is probably my repositories. Oops, didn't mean to do that. There we go. I'm just trying to get some of these windows out of the way. So we have the official repositories that's showing me where my packages are being downloaded from. And it looks like the archive ones come from Britain. The PPAs, if I had any installed, would appear here. Looks like I can. PPAs are repositories that are provided usually by the author of the software. So if you're looking to keep, if you're looking to get an updated copy of say Gluster FS or something like that, you would go to there would be instructions on their site on how to add those. You can use the CD-ROM. The authentication keys are Ubuntu. Signed in 2006. I wonder. Doesn't give me any other information about when it expires. Not very useful. Merge list problems. So I would mess with. There's a good way to get yourself in trouble. Purge residual configuration. Let's see. System reports. This is where I saw some issues with this. So, okay, so it's telling me I need to install language packs, multimedia codecs, and set up a system restore. So you can go through here and then you could install the localization packs, but if I do this, what is it actually going to install? Is that helpful to you? That's not very helpful to me. You'd have to go look every one of those up. And I know one of these is the Adobe Flash. Don't put Adobe Flash on Linux, guys. Don't do it. Don't do it. And then it gives me some information about that. Haven't had any crashes, so I probably won't have any crash reports. General information about the system. Okay. Nice. Synaptic Package Manager. This would be the graphical version of the APT. APT command that I just did. Whoops. Quick introduction is optimized and so yeah, okay. So yeah, if you're new, this is going to help you keep your system up to date. I can do a status check. That's not really what I want to know. Packages not installed. Packages installed. Okay. If they're green, I assume that those are up to date. You'll notice a lot of the packages come from Debian. That's true. All the way through. Don't see anything that's out of date. But I just did that, so I wouldn't expect it to come out with anything immediately. I don't use that. Terminal, we've got that up. Time shift. Oh, allows me to do a snapshot. Okay, that's rsync to Ware. Where are you rsyncing to? To yourself. Okay. Okay, so you would have to have some, obviously you would need some other drives in the system for that to be of any use. I'm not laughing at the package, I'm just laughing at the fact that I don't have anything set up to do that. Update Manager. Welcome to the Update Manager. Okay, so a short way to get security updates and software updates. Now, as I understand it from when we talked about this earlier, a new version of the kernel. You can go to 5.3. Let's do that. Yeah, there's going to be a buttload of stuff it's going to install. Pays to look around, eh? I'll be back. This will take a while. So we're done, and we've completed that. And now it says the system is up to date. The reason why you might want to install a new Linux kernel is if you know that there are security issues in the version that you're running. And this showed up here because there was a security issue in 5.0. I know that, and apparently so does Linux Mint. That's why they were asking me to install the latest. So right now, the running kernel is 5.0. Oh, wait, before let me not do it that way. Let me show you another way. It's right here. So I can select the Linux Mint icon down here, and then I can select shutdown, and then one of the options is to restart. So if you want the graphical way to do that, that's how you do it. Or you can just go to the command line and type sudo reboot now. Or put it in a time if you want to give, if other people are using your machine or logged into it. Give them time to get off and save their work. Okay. Yeah, I need to fix that. That is annoying. Oh, too far. All right, so hopefully we should have 5.3. Yep. So yeah, so there's that. So that's the reason why you'd want to be checking for that kind of stuff, is that those are security issues generally. Let's see, users and groups. So I can go in and edit, and change myself. Here, I could keep myself from being able to use sudo. Turn off admin. But yeah, you could add other users to this as well. I wonder how much control. Let's try one. Let's try. Yeah, we'll try Ware. Here, John. I'll put your name in. Let's see. Oh, it doesn't give me any control. I can't. Oh, can I? No. It's really good. That's kind of useless. First of all, I don't want a user on my system with no password. So I'm going to just take that out. Yeah, that's kind of useless. What else do we want to look at? Let's bring up Impress. I always do that one to see what version of this it is. I'm guessing this will be old. An older release, not old. 6073. Not the latest. But I mean, that's fine. That's fine. Let's see. For graphics, we have drawing, pics, simple scan. I don't see GIMP. That's probably under something else, huh? Sound and video. Celluloid is a video player. And then install media codecs if you needed those. And of course, just remember, if you pick their method, they will install things you don't want. So you probably would want to find out which codecs you really need to install. Sometimes things are, when they're for new people, they do things more than you would ordinarily want to do. Let's see, themes, panel, themes. There we go. I think this is just going to be the standard Mint ones, and there's a lot of different ways of coloring your system. You can make it look like Ubuntu. You can change it to something else. Or if you don't like the 3D-ish look, you can go to a flat icon, colors. Yeah, and there's high contrast and so forth. I don't need any of those. Window borders. Wonder what I can choose. Oh, dark. I can make those dark. Buttons, DMZ white. I suppose sounds are under sounds. How do I shut this thing up? Yeah, starting, get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. Tiling is no, no, no. Yeah, okay. I'll leave that one. That's probably all right. But now we probably have quieted it down. So I don't think there's any more. That is annoying. I know I rebooted. It's going to stick it back in there until I actually go in and remove it from the list of devices that's in boxes. So let me go. Oh, that's back to this again. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, we went through that. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. And I'll just go in and remove that. That's the device share. That's the CD, so it's gone now. So the next time that won't keep popping up. So with that, I'm going to go back and do a wrap up on this. So some thoughts. So as expected, some of the packages are pretty old, as we've seen, and that's really, that's fine as long as they're stable and they're patching them for security updates. That's fine. Cinnamon to me is not my favorite desktop. It seems slow to me. Maybe it doesn't to you. I told you about the Adobe Flash being installed. If you go through the updater, the troubleshooter, and you install the codecs, you get Adobe Flash. I don't want Adobe Flash anywhere near one of my systems. You may feel differently, however, but if you are encountering sites that are still using Adobe Flash, I hate to tell you this, but Steve Jobs was right. Adobe Flash is a virus, and it's not something you want to put on your machine. It's a good vector for inserting malware into your system, if nothing else. It is a very good vector for that. The firewall is not set up by default. It does use UFW, and there is a GUI for that. I didn't cover that in this video. If you're interested in a UFW video, I'd be happy to do that later on. UFW is very easy to work with, and it, of course, then pushes its changes into IP tables. So yeah, there's no big deal with that. I think the system would require a significant effort to harden, but that's just my opinion. But how many steps is it more than a standard Linux distro? 3, probably. So yeah, it's just most distros are not. They're not sent out into the world already hardened for us. We get to do that ourselves. So is it really a big thing? No, it's not a big thing. Install process was painless. It's very much like Ubuntu. Follows pretty much the same script as Ubuntu, except of course, this does not have the option for installing a ZFS experimental partition, which leads me to believe this is definitely 1804. There is, if you're interested, I'm not covering that today, but there is a Linux Mint for Debian base. If you don't wish to use Ubuntu, you can use Linux Mint Debian as the base, if you prefer Debian instead of Ubuntu. So that's really all the closing thoughts I have. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, would this be a system I would recommend to a new user? I see some things in here that are just unnecessary, but I do like the fact that they have the documentation here. They have the things that'll help hold your hand a little bit in getting through the process of installing, getting through the process of selecting packages. I do like that. I think, it's always good for, to prevent the type of situation where you would just not know what to do. And personally, I think that the error information from the logs is great, but it's not useful. And either turn it off or add some features to it in order to allow people to help mitigate what the heck that error message is telling them. It's great. The system is broken. Why? What do I need to do to fix it? I know those types of things take time, but if you're going to bother to put it in there, that's been my pet peeve my whole life. You give me an error message that's cryptic. That's great if you're a programmer. That doesn't help me as a user. So anyway, that's my thoughts for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and hope to see you again real soon, and bye for now.